sideways entry into a way to think about politics that wasn't, as fatiguing and as painful. Even though there are painful truths in what we captured, I do think for myself, for instance, my takeaway is very much a reminder that people like Stephen exist. And that is not a right or left thing. Everybody will respond when somebody like that comes into the room. And, that's a very authentic.
Thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. I love the documentary, very exciting. And I want to know why you guys decided to do a documentary about Boise State. I didn't know about it. I didn't grow up here in the US. So I would like to know the reason behind it.
Well, I think Amanda and I were struggling to understand the political division and polarization in our country. This was after Trump had been elected and the country seemed to be at a standstill politically. People can't talk to each other across party lines. And when we read about the Texas Boys State program in 2017, it was a revelation to us because neither of us had been to the program as young people. I don't think we knew much, if anything, about it. But as we realized that what they do is actually bring young people together who have very different politics and create a space for them to try to talk to each other, it seemed like a really interesting, potentially revelatory space to explore as filmmakers. And we were excited to go down to Texas because that's also a really interesting state politically.
Yeah, I was going to ask that Texas, if it was mentioned that Texas is very interesting. And I think the documentary talks about democracy that I think is dying a little bit. It's the same as my country. I'm from Brazil and we have the same problem, very, very polarized over there too. So Amanda, I want to know this is your debut directorial, and how exciting it is, and you guys won the Sundance award. Can you recall the feeling to back then and then afterwards was pick it up for Apple TV Plus?
I mean, I don't really have the perfect word. I had so many feelings all throughout making this film. It's amazing, really, that you can read an article in the Washington Post and think, that's kind of interesting. And then, you sort of put it on the table and then you come back to it and it keeps coming back. And then you think, okay, we're going to actually try and make this movie. And, the worst thing that can happen is someone says no. And that's not what happened. There was a lot of yeses along the way. And Jesse and I are married and have been working together for 20 years. And so we have a real shorthand with each other. We've written a lot of movies in the edit room together, but normally the films we make are very small team. It's really just Jesse with the camera in the field shooting for years and years. And this one we had to capture in 1 week. And so it was sort of like, going from like a singer-songwriter, one-man band and coffee shops to like, this was a blockbuster to film.
Stadium Rock.
Stadium Rock. And so that kind of terrified me. I mean, that's one of the words I would hit. Actually, it's terrifying to be a director it's also terrifying to know that you have to get a movie in 1 week. And so we put together a very big band of people who are all extraordinary. And that's really, I think, the collective energy of all of us and the fabulous kids that we followed and the fabulous partners who funded our film. It was extraordinary. And I feel so lucky.
Yeah, and I can only imagine you need to pick the right cameraman, the right person to because I understand that you have like 7 groups, different groups of in the time frame was very short. What was like the most challenge is to coordinate them, is to find the subjects, what was the most challenge?
That's right. I think that actually the biggest challenge for us, the most important challenge, was to find our subjects, was to find the young men that we could follow through this experience. Because what's so amazing about Texas Boys State is it's really big. It's 1,000 teenage boys, but we wanted to find 3 or 4 who we could follow through this intense week. And to do that, we had to travel all across the state of Texas. We spent about 3 months meeting boys in their living rooms and at school. And we're very, very fortunate that we found these young men in the film, Ben and Stephen and Robert, we found before things got started. And they're all very different politically. They come from very different backgrounds, but they all really grabbed us in ways that are almost hard to describe. They're very charismatic. They're very smart. They're complicated. They're ambitious and politically sophisticated. And they were all also vulnerable and kind of open to being in this film and to kind of sharing their experience. And I think that is the cornerstone of the movie, is them sharing their journeys with us. And then we met Renee actually at Boys State when he gives that extraordinary speech. How you met him is how we met him, and we immediately cast him in the movie. And then we had our cast, our ensemble of 4 young men, and they're very special.
Yeah, they are. They are. I fell in love with them. I like them because of different reasons. I don't want to spoil to anyone, so that's why I like them. I think another challenge that you guys have after like filming for a week and 7 crews and the editing room, the editing must be very challenged. How to put together? How many hours of footage you guys had, and how did you do to put that together?
We amassed about 350 hours, which we then took down to an hour and 40 minutes. That is always the challenge with verite film, because you've lived the experience of filming the event, the whatever footage you've accrued, but then you have to kind of take a step back and look at it. This is the beauty of having editors, is they really do not have a connection with personal connection with anybody that you filmed. So they have a little more of a dispassionate eye, and so we worked with our longtime collaborator Jeff Gilbert. He's cut a couple of films with us, and we also have a shorthand with him in the writing sense. We also worked with Michael Volman, who helped us kind of with that first pass of just, okay, 350 hours. Well, we know sort of what we're going to tell the story of, which is the governor's race, right? But then there's all these other related state party chair elections and, the legislature and how that fits in. So it was not easy. We shot the film in a week and it took a year to edit. So you're right. That was actually the other challenge, a big challenge for us. But we really wanted to approximate that emotional feeling we had while we were shooting the film, which was, crazy and chaotic and anarchic and Lord of the Flies-ish and boyish. But then we also had all this emotion. We had much more emotion than I imagined going into the shoot. We felt Stephen's journey. We felt Renee's journey. We felt Robert's kind of, crisis. All these things, we wanted to have the audience feel that too. And that takes a while to get to.
Yeah, I can just imagine that, because it's a lot of like footage, a lot of good stuff, and maybe you can do a second documentary just about that, right? So, and Amanda, for you, I think you are the only woman on the crew, and among all the other boys over there, did you went crazy with all these masculinity there?
There were a couple of our fabulous cinematographers were also women, and I think there were moments where we'd look at each other and be like, "I've never been in a room like this before, and probably never will again." There's an energy to that space that's pretty extraordinary. I mean, there are also lots of adjectives for sort of both how sometimes off-putting it was, and sometimes exciting, and sometimes inspiring, frankly. And what it really was most of the time was challenging my preconceptions that I came in with. We made this film because we had questions about politics, but I think what we saw when we got there is a real special window that we had into boyhood. Because of the gender segregation of the program, we really could see, check in with boys. How are they doing in 2018 America, era of Me Too, era, conversations about toxic masculinity. I mean, what's going on with them? And I think that I knew I was going to see a lot of testosterone and a lot of machismo and a lot of that kind of thing. But I think I was also later then surprised by the level, as I mentioned, of emotion that I did see, and the level of listening, the kind of the appetite for something more meaningful. And I think that was really kind of wonderful. I liked that I was surprised by that.
Yeah, you can see that the guys, all of them, they are very smart, intelligent. They always like you notice that they studied, they know what they're talking about. But after like finishing and watching the documentary and everything, do you feel more hopeful about the future generations, or more, I don't know, fear? I don't know, something like that. You feel more hopeful about the next generation that can change something?
Well, I think we do have some big problems, and we have some cynicism, and we have real division. And the film acknowledges and confronts those factors. You see dirty tricks, and you see a real kind of opportunism. Ben Feinstein embodies that kind of win at all cost mentality. And I think the film depicts that very honestly. But I think for us, it also shows what is very hopeful, which is young people who are passionately engaged in the democratic process and keeping it healthy. It shows in Stephen Garza and Renee Otero's campaigns, young men who are finding their voice and, more surprisingly, finding support from people across party lines. Stephen really reaches out, and the electorate supports him, and that made us very hopeful that he could find common ground with a group that is predominantly white and conservative. He's a young man of color, and he has a very different background than many of them. Stephen's hopefulness made us hopeful, and his strength and integrity make us confident for a future that is led by young people who have strong moral convictions and a willingness to throw themselves into the process.
Yeah, he's my favorite, Stephen, by the way. Yeah, he has this background, and then he's so sweet, and I think he'll have a really great future. I hope so, and maybe he can do some change for everybody, not just for the immigrants, and I think for in general. In the documentary, we talk about the girl state and people state that also exist.
Right. So Stephen mentions in the film this idea that there might in the future be a people state. There is a girl state. Every state in America has a girls program and a boys program, except for Hawaii. Doesn't have either. So we would love to check in next on the girl state program somewhere. I don't know whether it would be Texas. We haven't, the programs have to come back in person, hopefully soon, hopefully by next summer. So stand by.
Yeah. And with this quarantine, will be a whole different, of course, right now we don't have that, but will be a whole different experience to do a documentary like this. Right. But you guys, aside from this idea to have a girl state documentary, do you have any other projects that you guys are working on?
We actually do have another project that also explores similar ideas about politics and democracy and finding common ground. And it's a very different kind of film. But we think of it as part of this bigger project that began with Boys State. And I think it's such an important conversation, as you know, in Brazil. And we certainly recognize democracy is fragile. And how do we create spaces where people can come together face to face? Because, with social media, we're so isolated and sort of exist in our own bubbles. And I think that finding ways to connect, to discover what we share in common and not exploit divisions, I think is the project of our future, and for young people and for people like us. So whatever films and stories can help us explore those big questions, hopefully as exciting and surprising as Boys State. No doubt Girl State, the film, the sequel, the sibling will be that too. And I think it's really the beginning of such an important conversation for us.
Yeah, and talking about social media, how much do you think social media influence the voters?
Probably a pretty significant. I mean, that was a very significant piece of Ben's campaign, and that's true to national politics as well. I think Jesse and I were a little trepidatious about the meme thing because it's definitely a younger person's game, and a lot of it was sort of like, whoa, I don't really understand what that's saying, but you can see the power of how quickly they can disseminate information. And I think that certainly in Renee's case, that kind of smear campaign, which is a display of, very real racism, I think that's true to national politics as well. And I think that that's when our simulation kind of went into the real world space, and things started getting very interesting to watch how they played out. I will say that that's the one moment where the organization the counselors stepped in, because really day one, they like hand over the program to the kids and say, okay, create a government. It's, your Boys State, you do what you do. But this was on day 5, like the first time they said, okay, wait a minute, this can't happen. They brought them all into the main hall, and they had a conversation about that. So I don't think that happens in national politics. It's like there's counselors on high, like bringing in us all and saying, no, no, no.
It's the voters who have to do that.
Yeah.
We're the check on our elected leaders. And I think that's why enfranchising voters and making sure that everybody who wants to vote can vote, making it easy for people to vote. That's how we hold our leaders accountable. Yeah, that's right. There are no counselors in national politics. We're the counselors. And
yeah, I hope for the best, especially this year that we have the election. To wrap it up, and what do you think you want the people take away from the documentary?
I think, unlike any other film we've made, people are bringing a certain amount of their own emotions about politics to watching this film, and I think that is exactly what should happen. Our film and your thoughts and feelings about films will come together in one place, and hopefully have a conversation where you ask yourself a little bit of, where are you on the hope sort of cynicism divide. But also, Jesse and I felt making this film, we're all kind of fed this steady diet of darkness in the news all the time, particularly about politics. And I think for us, this space, Boys State, was a really kind of nice sideways entry into a way to think about politics that wasn't, as fatiguing and as painful. Even though there are painful truths in what we captured, I do think for myself, for instance, my takeaway is very much a reminder that people like Stephen exist. And that is not a right or left thing. Everybody will respond when somebody like that comes into the room. And, that's a very authentic, you can't really create that stuff. We happen to luck out because we were there with cameras, but he is what he is. And there are other people like him, both in the Democratic and Republican Party, who will summon us to our better selves. And that reminder for me was my takeaway. But as I said, I think everybody will have different takeaways, and that's great. I really like that about certain kinds of the storytelling we do.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time again, and Amanda and Jesse. And I really enjoyed the documentary once more, and I hope everybody will enjoy the same as much as I did. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
I'm sorry for
of course.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
If you like this video, don't forget to comment, to like, and subscribe to our channel right here.